Okay. Okay, so I'm Bernadine Rosso. I'm a vision and resilience coach. I've been working in the area for about 10 years now. I've been a mother of two, so I have that experience under my belt, which is a training in and of itself. But mostly I've been working with women going through divorce with young children, as well as women who are doing both their work and raising children at the same time, looking for balance, looking for resources, how to stay on top of things when we're under pressure, when we're challenged. And I've done a Girls Rites of Passage program. Back in 2008, I founded that. It's been on the back burner, but I've had that as my experience working with youth. So here I am doing work with basic needs and UCSC, and in tandem participation and cooperation and creating a program with the Resilience Initiative. That's how I was introduced to Gwen, and super excited to be working with Sylvia Osterleek. I hope I said her last name right. So she and I are producing and presenting and hosting those resilience series workshops together. We had a really great feedback. I sent you an email earlier today, Gwen, with some of the things that the students have said, including appreciation for the time management tools, which I'm going to share with you today. So here we go. Well, before I share the screen of the documents that I hand out, I'll let you know that I am an ontological coach, meaning how you do one thing is how you do everything. So how I'm presenting this is really looking at that unique lens that each student comes in with that you were speaking to, Jennifer, in your introduction. But it really is considering that we all have a unique set of belief systems, beliefs about ourselves, beliefs about the world, that can hinder and sidetrack us from actually just doing the thing that we know to do. Most of us know that, you take the step, you get the result, but there's some stuff in the way in that process that keeps us from actually taking those steps, even though we know that we will get what we are looking for if we take those steps. Kind of like if we stop eating sugar, we will feel better in our bodies. But do we do it? Sometimes not. So stuff like that. So with these tools, I will also share conversations that I will commonly have with my clients that I work with one-on-one, but I also lead groups. So I will talk about kind of how I have an overarching conversation about that, not just a unique one-to-one conversation. So these are tools that my coach has given me. I'm sorry, I had this open to the right page and now it's not there. My coach has shared with me that he developed, and I also have a document that I created myself that works a little better for me in my style. We each have our own styles. So the first one I want to share is something called the Top 6 Checklist. Now, my coach works with CEOs and top executives, and most people have their way that they like to do things, no matter how professional or basic we all are. This is a hands-on, like you would ask someone to print this out just to get back to the basics, not to insult their intelligence, not to say they don't know what they're doing, but just to say, hey, try this on. If you don't like it, or if you want to adapt it to something that works better for you, feel free. But I'm going to ask you to just try this on, see if you can, play with it for about a week, and then, feel it out and see how this works for you. And I'm happy to share these documents with you at the end. So top 6 checklist. Don't give yourself more than 6 things to do in a day is the rule here. Brainstorm the first 6 lines, and after you brainstorm, number them in order of priority in the little squares provided. After that, it's a matter, this is something you would do the night before, so this is for every day. You'll see that the document that I am going to share next is not an everyday thing, because I'm not an everyday person. I'm more like a get it done once, follow it to the end. I need an extended version versus like, okay, the night before. But if you are under pressure and you have a lot of things to do in the course of a week and your brain needs to keep on track, I recommend the daily checklist. So you can see, in addition to the top 6 that you're going to list for each day that's coming, you can write down errands, to-dos, phone calls, and emails. This is just to get things out of your brain that are kind of draining your focus, nagging you. Maybe it's not something that needs to be done that next day, but you just need to write it down. This is kind of a place to just brain dump those things that are not on your top 6. So what would your top 6 be? Things like projects, things like major assignments, specific amounts of time that you need to put into something that's due later in the week, right? So these are your priorities that you are naming and getting clear of for yourself the night before the day that you have to do these things. Does that make sense? Any questions about this? Cool. It's pretty simple, and yet, why do we not do it? Well, I'm going to give you an example of the other calendar tracking that I developed myself based on what I know of myself. So sometimes we know things about ourselves and we need to adapt. This is how I adapted the top 6 so that I would actually use it. Okay, so I call this the top 6 for the week. In anticipation of the week, I do this on a Sunday evening. Again, print it out. I actually use this with my partner so that we know what's coming together. I can't tell you how much more successful we can be if we have someone that's not just holding us accountable and telling us, you should be doing this, or did you do that, but really can see what we're responsible for and have a little empathy for the fullness of our week as we're going along. Or we can see, you know, that we have an empty spot and say, hey, I see you have an empty spot. Can we go for a walk? Can I support you in your self-care or having downtime, right? Just having someone witnessing counts for a lot in our success is what I've noticed. So in the top 6 for the week, this is what I would do on my own. I would track the things that I have accountability for, like meetings like this with other people, the things that you absolutely cannot miss, classes. If you can put your self-care in this is really great too. When you know you need to eat by a certain time, when you know you need a walk in the afternoon or to have lunch, and you know you need to end by a certain time of the day, otherwise your brain is fried and you're just not even present and available to do anything. So you put that in your time slot here, pretty basic. Down here, and you do that for the whole week. Down here at the bottom, there is a space for 6 things. Again, the minimum and the maximum, or not the minimum, I'm sorry, the maximum is 6 things. You can have less than 6 things. That's actually recommended too, because usually there's things we forget that we need to put in there, right? But each 6th thing has a checkbox next to it. And this is what I share with the students in the Resilience series, is that if you know you have an assignment due on a Thursday or a Friday, that you're going to actually put that thing at the top of the list on the day before. You're going to put it on the 2nd or the 3rd, depending on other priorities, on the day before that day, and so on. So you're really looking at prioritizing, being really clear about what your priorities are on the day that they are absolutely needing to be done before the day comes, before they realize, oh my God, it's due today, or oh my God, I forgot that thing, or oh my God, this is taking longer than I expected it to. So this isn't setting yourself up for an ideal, right? And most of the time things will come up. We stay up too late the night before, so we end up sleeping in. You end up, catching a cold, or, getting an emergency phone call from your mom, you talk on the phone for an hour and it takes away from, your steady climb. Accounting for those things, giving yourself plenty of time rather than waiting till the absolute last minute, which is kind of what our human tendencies are. In this process, you want to make sure that people are accounting for their self-care, that they're accounting for the necessity of sleep, the necessity of a good diet. I mean, not just chomping down a bag of chips in 15 minutes or while you're doing an assignment, but actually taking 15 to 20 minutes to eat and digest your food, go outside for 15 minutes. This is a conversation that I have before I have this one. We talk about self-care and what are the basic needs that you need to put in place and try on a daily basis. Things like water, things like rest, things like sleep. Exercise would be a bonus. But implementing those things into the calendar as well, so you can actually see that everything has a spot. I recently had a conversation with a client of mine who realized that she actually had 8 extra hours in the day that she wasn't accounting for. She felt like everything was pressed up against itself and there was no time for anything. But when we actually looked at the time that she needed for sleep, for eating, for work, that she had 8 hours in a day that were not accounted for, and that like just freed her up in a whole new way. And what we don't realize is that when we're distracted, when we're overtired, when we can't make decisions, like this is what this is for, to lay it all out. So all we have to do is follow our own instructions. When it was laid out, she could see that in those times that she had free, we started talking about it. She was getting on Facebook. She was watching Netflix series. She was playing the video game. Like there's so many things that we take time to do that distract. Clean something, you know, it's like, I'm sorry, cleaning this is not a priority. If we're really looking at the calendar, if we're really looking at what there is to do, you only have so much time to get that assignment done, and it's right in front of your face. Okay, that's what this is really great for. Yes, questions?
Bernadine, I wanted to ask you, when you work with these two forms, well, the daily one as well as this weekly one, and you're working with your students, are you asking them, you mentioned including self-care, sleep, and food, which I absolutely agree is crucial for students particularly.
Yeah.
Like, yes, you are allowed to stop and eat. You are allowed to take 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Do you include other like daily tasks that need to be done, like taking care of a pet, or you know,
Laundry.
yeah, laundry, or like a lot of my students have like daily or every other day kind of phone calls with home, right? Like their parents don't want to just talk to them once a week, right? So do you include those as part of the, yeah, okay.
Definitely. And I would say, even if they think that they're going to miss it one day, that they schedule it twice. Because sometimes we see those things in our calendar and you're like, oh, I can skip that. Or, oh, my friends are asking me to go out, you know, tonight. I'm going to wait till later. So
yeah.
So if there's something like that, so what I'll usually do is have them make a list ahead of time. Like you could do this right now if you wanted to try it yourself. You make a list of all the things, just brainstorming, right? We always have these things running through our mind. Oh my God, I got to get blah, blah, blah. And some people never write it down. They just put it in their digital or write it in one big list and then they close it and they don't look at it, right? But knowing it's lingering takes a certain amount of energy, and it takes a certain amount of focus away from actually getting the thing done. So this is a really great way. You say, list, you know, just brainstorm. Sometimes I'll do it with them. I'll say, tell me all the things that you need to do, and they'll just brain dump, and I'll write it down and I'll send them the document, right? And then their job is to then take that list of things and implement it into this. So that's, I mean, it's basic. We have calendar. Like I love my paper calendar. Like this is what I use, and I still do it twice. Yeah, I love my paper calendar. I will not.
And I've been looking around for it, but I know I brought it home with me, but I can't find it. But I have a similar, like to your 6 things a day. I have a thing where it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, next week, and then like it has like 6 or 7 things. So I don't know where it is. I'm going to show it.
Yeah, so people can adapt the systems that they're already using. That's why I'm like, I don't want to insult anyone and think that you don't already have something like this. And for some people, they've never heard of implementing self-care into their calendar. Or for some people, they've never heard of like actually listing 6 things a day. That's all you get, versus just this big long to-do list that they're walking around with, and they're comparing it to their calendar, and all of a sudden it's Wednesday and there's no hour in the day.
That's my favorite, is
committed. Yeah.
The students, and Janet, I don't know if you've seen this too, but the students who are like, oh, I'm going to study for 8 hours. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, that legitimately you're not.
Yeah. 2 or 3 hours is my max. Otherwise, it's self-abuse, really. And then I got to walk, and it doesn't mean you have to take a big break, just 15 minutes to get up and breathe and stretch and like get in your body again, eat something. So this is all part of the conversation, but this is the basic, handout for it. The other piece I know that someone mentioned about like losing motivation. There's another sheet I have. I could bring it up if you want to give me a minute to do that. Okay, so this one is called Managing Complex Change. And what it is it is a way that you can look across the span. Let me just hang on. It's hard for me to talk, and here it is. Oops, that's the wrong one. The overarching visual. I love visuals. Okay, so here we are. So this is called Managing Complex Change, sorry. And what you're looking at here is that vision, skills, resources, rewards, and action plan are necessary for change to happen. If there's no vision, you're confused. Why am I doing this? Why am I going to school? Why am I working so hard? Why am I pushing myself? So the vision has to be clear. You have to be motivated by your vision. If there's no skills, you get anxiety. I'm going to be caught as a fraud. People are going to find out I don't know how to use technology, on and on and on. No resources, frustration, right? No rewards. Okay, so I want to talk about rewards. This is the thing that people avoid every time. So you want to create a reward system. How my coach teaches it in this document, when I share it with you, you will see that it's linked to a money value. $10 reward, or what is it? It's like a $20 or less reward, $50 reward, and $100 reward. And as you meet your mark, those 6 things that you have a day, you match the reward to the amount, the value amount, with the bigness of the thing that you've accomplished, right? Many people get stopped with the money thing. They're like, I can't afford that. I have, my budget's already set out and I have a plan for this. And I can either say, put money aside, or you can say, do something that doesn't cost money. Take yourself out for a picnic on the grass, pack a lunch and go to the beach. Give yourself a hot bath. This should be self-care is what it should be. But if you want to relate it to reward, especially for students who really don't indulge in kind of outdoor time, you can come up with some pretty creative things. And they can even make it fun. Put it in a jar, decorate the jar, and pull it out. And like it's a surprise, which makes a reward in and of itself, something like that. So rewards. And then no action plan, false starts. So this is everything from a daily top 6 to a weekly top 6 to a monthly top 6 to, looking at their whole semester or their whole quarter, and how are they gonna, what are all the things that they have to get done, creating a timeline, posting it on the wall. Like visuals are really great because it has us it gives us a reminder of what we're actually trying to create, the world that we can have reflected back to us, versus again putting it in a notebook, closing it, and then you go out and have fun and live your real life. That's like, you want something that's motivating you as a visual, that's staring you back at the face. I recommend getting stickers, cutting things out of magazines, like something to help them represent their vision, their goal, what they're inspired by, what this means for them. So that's it. And I'm happy to share this with you too. Any questions? Cool. It's good stuff. And like I said, there's other versions of it, and there's other conversations that I have around each of these. I'll usually work with someone with this over the course of 1 to 2 months, one-on-one, just because, again, we all have certain filters or blocks or conversations or belief systems within our own brains that keep us from taking these steps and say, oh, I've done this before, it doesn't work. I'm not that kind of a person, or no, I don't see the value in that. I'm just going to keep doing it my way. And then we get into what that's about. So, anything else? Any questions? Was that helpful?
I love that last handout that you just presented, because I think I feel like, and I could see myself in some of those too sometimes. But yeah, just it's just a very clear cut way to, why am I feeling so anxious? Why am I feeling like I can't get this done? And it just really reminds us to like take a step back, kind of outline all of these different, okay, do I have my vision? Do I have my action items? Do I have the skills that are adequate for this kind of thing? And I feel like, of course, people do, but sometimes they just need to reframe, right, and rethink about it. And
Always.
always, right, and everything's like a puzzle piece. Everything kind of works together. So I love that last handout, and of course the first one that you shared as well. But I was wondering, is it okay when we work with students to share some of these handouts that you're
Oh,
sharing with
please
us?
do. Yeah. On the documents, it has my logo, it has my name, and
Perfect.
then it says, credit due to, and I have my coach on there because he shared those with me. So it was, it's like sourcing, you know,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Thank you.
totally. Please do. Or
I
make your own version. Yeah, go ahead, Gwen.
I also really I mean, all of these are great, and I think I used some version, at least of the first two. I think this um, was really insightful because it sort of goes back to what your reaction is when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful, to think, oh, anxiety occurs when I feel I'm not accomplishing, and depression, like I could see how those connections back to the reactions that we're all having as we're not or are accomplishing, because there's also the positive side where, at least for me, I've got my little daily checklist, and it's very similar. I've got it in my little notepad, and I do it, and it always feels so good to cross it out. Like,
Yeah.
so I think there's those little incentives that we're giving ourselves along the way, and setting up incentive structure that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go eat ice cream or whatever, I think is also helpful. I wondered if you get more granular than on what is an action plan, given that sort of, without that structural notion in place, then kind of it all seems to fall apart if you're all the way down to that end product there.
Yeah, so here, just what I presented today is really like, I started small and then kind of got bigger. The action plan would be like, okay, what's your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? Do you want to write it? What will your experience be when you get there is a really important place to start, because that is the vision. And when you're working with a group of people, especially like in a business or on a team, people get so resistant to creating a vision together. It's really amazing, because no one wants to say, I want to do it my way, but it's really hard to find that, like, where do we intersect? What is our common ground? What is the common interest, and how do we align with that, given our own perspectives, set of gifts and skills and shortcomings, like everyone confessing, like, I'm not really good at that. Like, that's a hard thing to do in a group setting, especially, or for a student among other students, to say, I don't know how to use Zoom, or I've never used a calendar before, or what's self-care. Like, that's such a vulnerable place for them to even start with, to even begin to use the tools. So the tools are actually meant to invite those conversations. And that's what we do in the Resilience series. We invite the conversations, and that they get to see that they're not so different from each other. And then the vulnerability starts to bubble up, and they really see that they're all in this together, and that their struggles are not so uncommon, and that they can start to take these on. A lot of times students won't take things on, or people won't take things on if they're stopped by some notion that there's something wrong with them, right? So the idea is like, there's nothing wrong with you. You can do this. Let's start where you are. And you find out what they've used before, what they feel comfortable doing, what they don't, and then adapt. So
there was a planner that I used one job. The one job that I had that was incredibly demanding and stressful, and that there were multiple projects going on with multiple to-do lists, and so similar to what our students are going through. And I think it was called the project planner, but it sort of started with like, here are the big picture items, right? And then it flowed downwards from there. And so depending on how a student thinks, that's an option that I will describe for them. And so across, so it was it was essentially a notebook sized planner, right? And so across the top, there would be the projects across the top. So there'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever, maybe 6, maybe that was the magic number. And then the next row in the middle would be the to-do list items.
yes.
And then the last row on the bottom was like your weekly schedule, Bernadine. So it was like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And so it was a Monday schedule with the times, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So you could actually go set up your week,
Yes.
knowing these are the projects that are taking priority this
Perfect.
week. These are the to-do items that I need to do for each of those projects
Yes.
this week.
Yes.
And then these are my meetings and email, all of the appointments
Yep.
that I have. So it really was so much easier to manage, instead of like, my usual system,
Yeah.
which works really well in this job, is more like a file folder.
Sure.
Like, here's my 3 projects, each project
Your
has a
top things
folder.
that you carry around with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and like, and I'll just look through each folder as I go, and if I have a busy week, I'll sketch it out more. But that project planner really made a huge difference in terms of like breaking it down, as Gwen was saying, to that granular level. Like, okay, so here's the big picture of, we're working on this event. And so for this week, I need to call the caterer and I need to call the florist.
Yes.
That's all I need to do this week on that event. So once I've got that done, I can look at the next project.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was so much easier to compartmentalize. And
yes. You brought up a really great point, which is that when you're going to have a busy week, like that's when you get really focused, right? So by default, what I've noticed for myself and other people is when the stress rises, if we don't have a system already in place, and we don't already know that about ourselves, that when it gets stressful, that's when we need to focus the most. The default is, it's a stressful week, you get overwhelmed, you eat a bunch of ice cream, you stay up late, you drain your energy, you stress yourself out worrying about things that you don't need to and doing things that aren't necessary, and then you crash and burn and go, oh my God, this always happens to me, I'm a terrible person. That's the default. Unless people have a system in place, or they know themselves already, which most students don't because they're still in their early 20s or late teens. This is like the meaning maker, like how this happens, like becomes their identity, right? And maybe will last until their 40s or 50s or till they die. So if we can help them to be like, this is, here's trial and error, let's see what works for you. And then be able to say, okay, so here's a little hint. When you have an extra full week, that's when you need to take extra care of yourself. That's when you need to make sure you're prioritizing. That's when every moment and every choice that you make is going to make or break your success for the week. And unless they're clear, like, this is how the world works and this is how humans, succeed or not, this is just, it's not about you. It's about what works and what doesn't. And I'm going to teach you what works, and it's up to you to do it or not.